Hi everyone, Cheese here doing a little voiceover work for Dimsy. Today we're going to talk about the Tier 6 British tank destroyer, the AT-8. The AT-8 is a typical British tank destroyer, slow on the move, heavy frontal armor, and a fast-firing gun with low alpha. The tank has a low profile, quite similar to the Jagdpanzer IV, except that the German tank moves and rotates twice as fast. The shape is perfectly rectangular, so there's definitely some space inside for a table to eat your tea and pudding. And with that mobility, you won't even spill it. If you have the premium AT-15A, you should already have a pretty good idea about what to do with this tank. Get to the front line, track your opponents, and methodically chop off their hit points. In other words, if you prefer the steady progress toward victory and don't like to run around the map like a wounded deer, then this is the tank for you. Most people are going through this line to get to the Death Star with its absolutely monstrous gun. One way to get to Tier 10 is via the Churchill gun carrier, so if that is your goal, you could just skip the AT-8 altogether. The other way is to play the low tier tank destroyers, starting with the Universal Carrier 2-pounder up to Tier 6 where the AT-8 is located. The Electo and AT-2 are fun vehicles, so you probably want to go through this line anyway. Now let's have a closer look at the AT-8. The first thing on a tank destroyer you should care about is the gun. The stock gun is the 6-pounder anti-tank gun Mark V, which, like all stock guns, is pretty bad. The second one is the 75mm anti-tank gun Mark V, and it's not all that much better. The APCR round penetration is less than the AP rounds of the next gun up. So if there's one thing you take away from this video, let it be this. Use free XP to get to the third gun, the 77mm anti-tank gun Mark II. If you have enough free XP, I'd even suggest you go straight to the top gun, the 17-pounder anti-tank gun Mark VII. It has slightly more penetration than the 77mm gun, but has a slower rate of fire. Now let's see how these guns perform in the field. We'll start with the stock gun, and it feels like a machine gun. It fires really fast, and when it can actually penetrate, the alpha is pretty low. Granted, he's shooting at the front plates of a higher tier heavy tank, but still, this is not a gun you're going to want to take into battle.
We didn't even scratch them. We didn't penetrate their armor. That one didn't go through. Enemy is hit. We just stinged them. We didn't penetrate their armor.
Now let's look at the third gun, the 77mm. It's not as fast, but the alpha damage is almost doubled. So, combined with vastly superior penetration, it is definitely the gun that you want to start with. You can see here he's shooting again at the front of the same tank, a Tier 7 IS, but is having absolutely no trouble penetrating with each shot without even going into sniper mode. Well, except for that one.
That one bounced. Penetration. We hit them hard.
The next important upgrade after the gun in the AT-8 are the tracks. You might think it's the engine, but I'll explain why the tracks are a better next choice. You will get slightly better traverse speed from the track upgrade, but also don't forget that better tracks are more resistant to damage, so you will have a better chance to stay mobile. The last thing you'll want to upgrade is the engine. You will already have the second engine if you played up the line through the AT-2, and the third one is only a little bit better, so most likely you won't even notice much difference after the upgrade anyway. So let's talk about equipment. As always, the first thing you must install is the gun rammer. Always install the gun rammer in every tank wherever possible. Typically, the next slot would be reserved for the enhanced gun laying drive, but since the top gun in the AT-8 already has an excellent aiming time of 1.7 seconds, you could consider using some other equipment instead. I would suggest the coated optics with vents for a more aggressive gameplay, but you could go with the camo net with binoculars for a more passive sniping style. This is a frontline brawling tank, so what about the armor? The armor on the front plate is very good. It's not angled, but your enemies will still have 203mm of steel to get through. One major weak point is the commander's cupola at the top, which is pretty big. It's not quite R2-D2 on the KV-5 kind of big, but still a fairly large target. The right side of the front has a machine gun port, which is less protected and considered to be a weak point. If you find yourself facing the front of an AT-8 in the field, this is a good place to aim. Now there is a huge box on the left side, which is an external module that can protect you from HE rounds, but be careful exposing it because your gunner, loader, and ammo rack can all be damaged from getting hit there. That being said, you generally shouldn't go too far away from the cap area in case you have to protect it. Try not to go alone and attempt to stay near solid walls or other obstacles in order to avoid the circle of death. A good position is like this one here, where you can cover the right part of your hull. Always try to track your opponents to fully utilize your damage per minute. Remember that your style is slow death and not power strikes. Ultimately, the AT-8 is not a tank that most people will want to keep in their garage forever. The armor doesn't hold well against opponents from higher tiers, and combined with low mobility, this tank frequently becomes easy prey. But don't be upset about it, the gun is just fine, and there definitely will be games where you will carry your team. Remember the prize that awaits you at Tier 10, and enjoy the trip.